Welcome to the Monsters Among Us podcast. This is episode 17, Unsolved Disappearances in National Parks. We know this is not a monster, but it's scary, and we wanted to talk about the subject. It has been called Missing 411.
It really is unsettling, isn't it? Think about these places, national parks, forests, places we see as beautiful,
Yeah.
safe even,
Right, you go there for peace, maybe adventure.
and then people just vanish. Baffling disappearances, often without a single clue left behind.
Exactly, and that phrase, Missing 411, it's become this kind of label for these really weird cases, hasn't it? People disappearing in the wild, and the circumstances just don't make sense. It comes from David Paulides' work, mostly.
Right, his books and research, he highlights these clusters of disappearances, often in national parks, wilderness areas, pointing out these recurring, very unusual details.
Yeah, details that seem different from just getting lost, you know?
Definitely. They stand out from the typical lost hiker scenario in significant ways.
So for this deep dive, we're digging into some of these cases. We're using source material that you, our listener, actually provided, which is great. And our goal here isn't to, jump to crazy conclusions or anything.
No, definitely not. We want to be objective.
Yeah, look at the account, see if there are patterns, maybe just raise some questions based on what the sources say. Stick to the info we have.
The sources are pretty varied. We've got transcripts of talks with Paul Lights himself, but also deep dives into specific missing person cases.
So it gives us a good mix, the big picture and the specific stories.
Exactly. It lets us see potential trends, but also the really granular, weird details in some of these individual events in these natural spaces.
Okay, let's start then. First case takes us to Yosemite, July 1972. A young man named Dickon.
Right, Dickon. A 20-year-old pre-med student from Cambridge University, originally Ethiopian. His family was apparently in, watchmaking and diamonds.
Wow, so a bright guy, privileged background.
Seems so. And he disappeared from Curry Village, which, isn't exactly remote wilderness. It's described as a congested tent camp.
Right in Yosemite Valley. Busy place.
He'd asked for directions to Half Dome at the front desk. Paved path, apparently. That's the last anyone saw him. Heading that way.
And then?
Well, his checkout date comes, July 31st. Staff go to his tent. Luggage is there, completely untouched. And the bed, never even slept in.
So he asked for directions, walked off down a path, and just, poof, left everything behind.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Suggests a very sudden, unplanned something.
Yeah.
Departure, interruption.
It's really odd. And what's weird is how little info is out there about it publicly. You'd think a disappearance in Yosemite.
That's a key point. It sort of faded away until someone filed a Freedom of Information Act request, FOIA.
Ah, what did that turn up?
A flyer? Or maybe a cable. From Ethiopia to the U.S. State Department about Dickon. That's what brought the case back into the light, basically. Shows there was international concern, at least.
And didn't you mention this case connects to others in Yosemite?
Yeah, that's another layer. 2 other unsolved cases, also college students, same general area of Yosemite, also described as brilliant, also supposedly stuck to paved trails.
3 bright students, busy area, paved paths, just gone. That's unsettling.
It is. And there's historical context, too. The parents of those earlier students, they actually petitioned President Eisenhower back in the day.
Eisenhower? Why?
They wanted him to send in mountain troops for the search. They felt like they weren't getting enough help locally. Shows this isn't a totally new concern in that park.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. More recent case, January 2015, Spokane, Washington. John Marshall.
Right, John Marshall, 49 years old, impressive background, retired lieutenant colonel, U.S. Marines, head of general surgery at the Spokane VA.
Wow, definitely accomplished. And he had a routine.
A very regular one. Morning run from the YMCA downtown, leave his stuff, go run, come back. Predictable.
And his run would take him near the Spokane River?
Likely along it, or at least nearby. It's a major natural feature right there in the city.
So, January 25th, 2015, he leaves the Y for his run, caught on camera.
Yep, and then nothing. His keys, wallet, car, all still at the YMCA. Clearly planned on coming back.
But he didn't, and there was something about the weather.
Yeah, heavy fog that morning. Really thick. So thick they couldn't get helicopters up right away for the search. Limited the initial response.
And they found him.
Tragically, yes. The next day. In the Spokane River. And this is where it gets strange. He was below these 15-foot high rapids.
Okay, so maybe he fell in near the rapids?
Maybe. But how he was found was unusual. He was face up in the water.
Face up. Is that unusual?
Statistically, yes. Very, especially for men found in water. Usually it's face down.
No.
That's what the sources emphasize.
Huh. Okay. Anything else?
Yes. Get this, his iPod. It was in his pocket, and it was completely dry.
Wait, what? Dry? After being in a river below rapids, how is that even possible?
Exactly. That's the million-dollar question. It really makes you question how he ended up in the water.
So the official cause of death was drowning.
Ruled as drowning, yes. But the face-up position, the dry iPod,
Yeah.
it just doesn't quite fit a simple accidental drowning, does it?
Oh, it really doesn't.
It makes you wonder. And, some of the missing 411 stuff mentions patterns of men found face-up in water, sometimes hints of, date rape drugs, but
But no proof in this case.
no concrete proof mentioned in the sources we reviewed for Marshall, no.
Yeah.
Just odd circumstances piling up.
Okay, let's go to Arizona now. Coconino County, April 2007. Reinhard Kerner.
Reinhard Kerner, yeah. 61 years old, another highly intelligent person, a German physicist.
German physicist. What was he doing in Arizona?
He was on a trip, apparently, rented a camper truck, heading towards British Columbia eventually, planned to meet his girlfriend in Vegas. He'd registered a Staircase Escalante National Monument, then called his girlfriend from Page, Arizona. So he was definitely traveling through that vast, remote wilderness area.
And then?
April 12th, Navajo police find his camper truck, locked, abandoned, near the Little Colorado River Gorge.
Just left there.
It seemed like it. Food still in the fridge, suggesting he hadn't planned a long absence. His notebook was there. Last entry was March 31st.
March 31st. So the truck might have been sitting there for almost 2 weeks.
Could have been. It suggests a really abrupt halt to his trip.
And they searched. Big area out there.
Oh, yeah. Huge search. Helicopters, planes, ground teams, dogs. Found absolutely nothing. No trace of him.
He just vanished into the Arizona landscape.
Pretty much.
Ah.
And there's a strange detail in one of the police reports from Lieutenant Mark Christian.
What's that?
A local resident saw the truck earlier, around April 1st, and apparently mentioned there was local talk about Turner being taken by aliens.
Whoa. Okay. That's out there.
It is. But maybe it just shows how completely baffling his disappearance was to people living right there. No normal explanation seemed to fit.
Was there anything else unusual?
Well, there was also a report around that time from locals of seeing a silver object in the sky.
And the dogs?
Couldn't pick up a scent. At all. Which, again, is super weird for a missing person search, especially out in the open like that. Scent should linger.
That keeps coming up, the dogs finding nothing.
It's a really common, perplexing element in these cases. What makes a scent trail just disappear? Was he removed quickly? Was it the environment? Or something else?
And didn't someone else mention seeing nothing?
Right. U.S. Fish and Wildlife teams were doing fish studies down in the gorge around that time. They saw no one enter the area. Just adds another layer of mystery.
Okay, this next one is tough. Colorado, Comanche Peak Wilderness, October 1999. A little boy, Jared Negrete, only 3 years old.
Yeah, this one's heartbreaking. Jared was with a singles group from a church visiting his family's resort nearby.
A singles group took a 3-year-old hiking deep into wilderness.
Apparently so. And the source notes they went quite far in, like 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
Without telling Jared's parents their exact plans, which seems questionable taking young kids that far into wilderness.
Definitely. What happened on the hike?
Jared got ahead of the main group. He walked up to 2 fishermen by a creek.
Okay, so there were witnesses.
Yes. He asked them about bears. Apparently banged a stick in the water. They told him to stop. And then they just let him walk away. Alone. A 3-year-old.
They just let him wander off in the wilderness.
That's what the account says. He was never seen alive again after that point.
Oh my God. That's awful. There must have been a huge search.
Massive. Tragically, a military helicopter involved in the search actually crashed. Shows how rugged that terrain is.
And then something about a phone call.
Weeks later, yeah. Jared's dad gets this anonymous call. The person claims to be inside the sheriff's office, says the family isn't being told the whole truth.
What? That just adds a whole other layer of conspiracy confusion.
Right. It suggests maybe something was known or suspected that wasn't made public.
Did they ever find him?
Not for 4 years.
Yeah.
Then, hikers found clothing believed to be his, way up high, like 700 feet above the trail where he was last seen.
700 feet above. How could a 3-year-old get up there?
Exactly. And with the clothes, they found a piece of skull, a single tooth on a log. But the clothes themselves, that's the really bizarre part.
How so?
His pants were inside out. His jacket was just lying on the ground. And both his shoes, which were apparently almost brand new, were sitting neatly, side by side, on a nearby boulder.
Sitting on a boulder, inside-out pants, that makes no sense for a lost child or an animal attack.
Not at all. And the CBI, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, they analyzed the clothes, found zero blood.
No blood. So much for the initial animal attack theory.
Right. That theory, usually mountain lion, was disputed by 4 different experts anyway. And think about it, his dad said Jared never tied his own shoes. How would they stay on his feet if he was dragged 700 feet up that incredibly steep, rough terrain, let alone end up sitting neatly on a rock?
You've been there, right, to that spot?
I have, yeah. It's incredibly steep, like 70–75% grade in places, loose boulders everywhere. It's hard for an adult to climb. The idea of a toddler getting up there or being carried without losing his untied shoes, it just seems impossible.
It really defies any logical explanation.
Okay, let's go to the Great Smoky Mountains now. June 1969. Another child, Dennis Martin, 6 years old.
Dennis Martin. Another really famous, really baffling case in a major national park. It was Father's Day weekend. He was with his dad, grandpa, brother at Spence Field, a popular spot.
What happened?
They were playing hide and seek. Dennis ducked behind a bush or tree. His dad was watching him the whole time, and he just vanished. Gone. Within feet of the Appalachian Trail.
Just like that, while his dad was watching.
Literally seconds. In plain sight almost. And then a massive search started, but it was immediately hampered. Rain. Heavy, heavy rain for 7 straight days. Just washed everything out. Made tracking impossible in that thick mountain terrain.
Terrible luck. Was there anything else strange around that time?
Well, sort of a minor oddity. There's another family named Martin also camping at Spence Field right then. Just a coincidence, but adds to the slight confusion of the scene.
But the big thing in this case, the really chilling part,
Yeah?
involves another family, right? The Key family. Exactly. They were about 2 miles away from Spence Field. They reported hearing this awful scream, described as sickening, and then they saw something. A large, hairy figure running through the trees, carrying something indistinct over his shoulder.
A hairy figure carrying something right after Dennis vanished.
That's what they reported. And they told investigators. They told a reporter. But somehow, that crucial observation never made it into the official Park Service reports.
It was just ignored, left out. Why?
That's the huge question. It raises serious concerns about the investigation. Was it incompetence? Or was it deliberately suppressed?
And didn't Dennis's father have some claims later on?
He did. He claimed the same FBI agent was involved in several disappearances in that park region, and that this agent later died by suicide. It adds a very dark, almost conspiratorial feel to it.
Wow. What about the trackers? Did they believe the Key family?
The head tracker, a guy named Dwight McCarter, a respected figure in the Park Service back then, he reportedly confirmed the Key family's story. He personally believed Dennis wasn't just lost, he thought he was abducted.
Abducted.
By who? McCarter's theory, or belief, was wild men. People living off-grid, hidden in the vast wilderness of the Smokies. And even a Green Beret regiment came into search, operating independently. They found nothing either. It just wasn't a typical lost kid scenario.
Man. Okay. Next case. Back to more recent times. July 2015, Lemhi County, Idaho. 2-year-old Dior Hilker.
Another toddler. Vanished near Timber Creek Reservoir at a campsite. He was with his grandparents.
How did it happen?
Almost instantly. His grandmother said, quote, "We turned our back and seconds later he vanished. Just incredibly fast."
Near water again. Did they search the reservoir?
Immediately. The sheriff brought in divers, searched the creek, the reservoir. He stated afterwards with 100% accuracy that the boy was not in the water. He also said he'd never seen anything like it in his whole career.
And the dogs? Let me guess.
Nothing. No scent picked up. Again.
It's uncanny.
It really is. In this case, with no trace in the water, no scent trail, the parents and grandparents started seriously considering abduction as the only possibility left.
Which connects back to that pattern you mentioned. Kids missing, sometimes found near water, sometimes found way up high. Locations that don't make sense.
Exactly. The patterns are hard to ignore when you look at enough cases.
Okay, one last case. This one goes way back, 1957. Mono Village, California. Another 2-year-old, David Scott.
And the parallels to the Dior Hilker case are pretty striking. Another toddler vanished in seconds from a campground.
Where was this campground?
Mono Village is in a kind of box canyon. Steep valley walls on 3 sides. Limited ways in or out.
So contained.
Relatively, yes. The parents saw David near their camper. They went inside for just a moment, came back out, and he was gone.
And because of the valley's geography?
They immediately suspected kidnapping. It just didn't seem possible for him to wander off and disappear so quickly in that contained space without being seen.
So they searched?
Yes, and Marines were actually brought in to help because the terrain above the valley was so rugged.
And they found him?
They did. But the location,
yeah,
it's just mind-boggling. 3,000 feet up the mountainside.
3,000 feet. A 2-year-old.
On a slope described as very steep, covered in boulders, almost no vegetation. And he was found naked, except for one sock, face down, deceased.
Naked. 3,000 feet up? How?
There was a switchback trail that accessed that area, but anyone going up it would have been clearly visible from the campground below. Nobody saw anything.
And cause of death?
The sources we looked at said no cause of death or autopsy report could be found, just found deceased in this impossible location.
It doesn't make any physical sense for a toddler.
None whatsoever. The terrain, the altitude gain, the lack of clothing being found face down, no reported cause of death. It's just a collection of impossibilities.
So when we look back across all these cases, especially the ones in national parks, forests, near water, these threads keep popping up.
They really do. The suddenness, off-band, broad daylight, people nearby.
The lack of tracks, like they just lifted off the ground, no sign of a struggle, no sign of being lost and wandering.
Then the clothing anomalies. Shoes off, sometimes neatly placed, clothes missing or found inside out.
And the locations where people are eventually found, if they are found, way too high, way too far, across impossible terrain, or in water, under weird circumstances like John Marshall.
Right. Or the dry electronics. The shoes sitting on a rock miles away. These details that just defy simple explanation.
Plus the eyewitness accounts that get dismissed, like the Key family, or the reports of strange lights or figures.
And that feeling many families have that they aren't getting the whole story, that information is being withheld by authorities investigating these park disappearances.
It's a lot, and these are just, 7 cases out of hundreds that Paulides and others have documented in these natural settings?
Exactly. It shows the complexity. There are no easy answers when you look at the details provided in the sources. And again, we have to stress we're sticking to what the sources report, not adding our own speculation.
Right. It's just presenting the patterns and the questions that arise from the accounts themselves.
These cases are deeply unsettling, no doubt about it. Mysterious. This look into the sources you provided really focuses attention on this phenomenon, particularly within our national parks and wildlands.
So when you think about all these details we've discussed, the varied circumstances, the impossible locations, the missing time, the odd clues, all happening in these natural environments, what single explanation could possibly cover all of that?
That's the core question, isn't it? Is there one unifying answer? Or are we looking at multiple different factors, maybe things we don't even understand yet at play in these disappearances out in the wild?
Something to definitely keep thinking about.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing these sources with us, and thank you for joining us on this exploration into some very unknown territory right in our own parks and forests.